My parents broke 3 years of silence to make amends. I walked into 16 relatives, a $400 bottle already empty, and lobster they knew I'd pay for. Dad smiled. "You're covering this, right?" I leaned to the waiter. 2 sentences. He nodded. They didn't know what I do for a living. The waiter set the leather check folder down in front of my father, and for one full second, nobody at the table understood what had just happened. 16 people. A table that looked like a wedding reception. Lobster shells piled on crushed ice that had long since melted into pink water. Wagyu grease congealing on a tiered silver stand nobody had touched in 20 minutes. 3 empty Bordeaux bottles standing like trophies, and a 4th open and breathing. And the check, sitting in front of the man who had told everyone, that I would be paying for it. My father picked it up the way you'd pick up something you found on the sidewalk. He opened it. I watched his face do the thing faces do when the number is bigger than the person expected, which I would learn later was a hair over $4,000. He looked up. He found me across the table. "Diana," he said, and he was still smiling, because the smile hadn't gotten the news yet. "Sweetheart, there's been a mix-up with the bill." "No," I said. "There hasn't." I'd been running operations for a 4-restaurant group for almost 6 years when my mother texted me out of a clear blue sky on a Tuesday in April. 6 years is long enough that I stopped flinching at numbers. I can walk a dining room and tell you the cover count, the average ticket, and roughly what the table in the corner is going to spend before they've opened the menu. I know food costs down to the ounce. I know what a bottle of 2016 Chateau Lascombs goes for retail because we poured it at a vendor tasting 18 months ago, and I know what it costs a restaurant to put it on a list, and I know what it costs you to drink it, which is a different and much larger number. I am, in other words, the worst possible person in the world to spring a surprise dinner bill on. They didn't know that. That was the whole problem with my family. They had decided who I was somewhere around my 19th birthday and never updated the file. My mother's text said, "Just the 4 of us. A fresh start, sweetheart, 4 of us. Mom, Dad, my sister Brooke, me," and then the last line, the one that made the back of my neck go cold even before I'd finished reading it. "Family takes care of family." I sat at my desk and looked at that line for a long time. Here is what you need to understand about that phrase. In my family, family takes care of family was never a sentiment. It was a transaction code. It meant the same thing every single time, which was, Diana is about to pay for something. At 19, while I was working doubles waiting tables to put myself through community college, my tips covered the electric bill 3 months running because Dad had a thing come up. Family takes care of family. At 23, I co-signed the loan on his truck, a 2019 Silverado, $46,000, because his credit was temporarily in a weird spot. Family takes care of family. At 26, I paid the deposit and first month on Brooke's apartment, $2,800. And I never told a soul, not even her, because Mom asked me to keep it quiet so Brooke wouldn't feel small. Family takes care of family. I had not heard the phrase or much of anything else in 3 years. The silence had a cause, and the cause was that I'd finally said no, one time. Dad wanted $40,000 to get in early on a friend's vending machine business, and I'd said I couldn't. And what I'd actually meant was, I won't. And they heard the won't underneath the can't, the way they always could. The temperature in the family dropped to nothing inside a week. Calls stopped. I wasn't invited to Brooke's birthday. When I texted Mom on Mother's Day, she replied with a thumbs up emoji 11 days later. By the end of that first year, I understood that I hadn't been disowned so much as switched off, like an appliance they'd decided was too expensive to run. 3 years of that. And then, a fresh start, sweetheart. I want to tell you I saw it coming. I did and I didn't. The part of me that runs spreadsheets for a living saw the shape of it from a mile off. The part of me that was still 19 and wanted her mother to mean it just this once, that part typed back, "Sounds good. Where and when," before I'd even decided to, so I'll own that. I walked in with my eyes half open, but only half. The restaurant was called Marrow, and I knew it, which is a small detail that matters. It's the kind of place that does $180 tasting menus and has a sommelier with opinions. It is 40 minutes from where I live and a solid hour from where my parents live, which already didn't track. You don't drive an hour for a fresh start, coffee equivalent dinner. You drive an hour when the venue is the point. I dressed down on purpose. Black slacks, gray blouse, flats, no watch worth noticing, no bag worth pricing. I have learned that when my family is about to read my net worth off my body like a barcode, the kindest thing I can do for everyone is give them nothing to scan. Before I started the car, I wrote myself a note on a yellow sticky and pressed it to the center of the steering wheel, where I'd have to look at it. It said, "One dinner, then home." I read it twice. I drove the 40 minutes. I pulled into the lot at 6:52 for a 7 o'clock reservation, which is exactly how early I always am, and I put the car in park, and I looked up, and the sticky note went stupid and meaningless all at once. because the lot told the truth before anyone inside could lie to me. Dad's Silverado, the one I co-signed, parked crooked across 2 spaces like it owned them. My mother's sedan beside it. 1 row over, Aunt Linda's wine-colored Buick, the one she's had since before I could drive. Uncle Greg's enormous SUV. My cousin Tyler's lifted Jeep with the light bar he definitely financed. And tucked in at the end, Brooke's little hatchback with the bumper sticker still on it from that cafe she co-founded. The one that took everyone's money and folded 11 months after the grand opening. I counted the cars 3 times because I didn't believe the count. 9 cars, just the 4 of us. I sat there with the engine ticking as it cooled. My hands were on the wheel at 10 and 2 like I was still driving. I noticed that and made myself let go. Here's the thing about that moment. I had the information. The lot was a confession in sheet metal. Any reasonable person reads 9 cars after being promised 4 and understands completely what's waiting inside. I understood it, and I told myself I was wrong. I told myself maybe Aunt Linda was here for something else. People share parking lots. Maybe Brooke sold the hatchback and someone else has the same dumb sticker. Maybe, and this is the one I really reached for, maybe Mom underestimated the head count. Maybe a few people heard about it and wanted to come because they actually missed me. Maybe this once it was just clumsy and not engineered. I wanted that so badly that I built it out of nothing and stood inside it. I peeled the sticky note off the wheel, folded it in half, and put it in my pocket. Then I walked in anyway. The hostess was maybe 22, polished, with the slightly anxious posture of someone working a section where the party has been there a while, and the energy has tipped from celebration to situation. When I gave my name, her face did something, relief I think, and she said, "Of course, they're expecting you, follow me," and led me toward a private alcove at the back. I heard them before I saw them. Aunt Linda's laugh first. It carries. It has always carried. It's a laugh built for the back row. Under it, the clink and ring of glasses. A man's voice, Uncle Greg, saying something with the cadence of a punchline, and the table breaking up around it. I turned the corner. 16 chairs. I counted later. In the moment, it just registered as too many. An entire long table of faces I hadn't seen in 3 years, all of them turning toward me at once like sunflowers. The food stopped me harder than the people did, because I read food the way other people read body language, and this food was screaming. Lobster tails, 8, 10 of them, on a bed of crushed ice gone soupy. The tiered stand of Wagyu sliders, 3 tiers, mostly demolished. A charcuterie board the size of a manhole cover. And the wine. I knew the wine. I knew it the second I saw the label, because I'd held that exact bottle at a vendor tasting and written its retail price on a spec sheet. A 2016 Bordeaux that runs about $400 on a list like Marrow's. There was one empty, one nearly empty, and a full one open and decanting. They had been here at least an hour. I could read it in the melted ice, in the flush on Aunt Linda's cheeks, in the way the table had the loose, overconfident warmth of people 3 drinks in. They had ordered everything heavy, everything expensive, the whole menu's right-hand column. And they had done it before I arrived, which is the part that, even then, made my stomach drop half an inch. You don't order the $400 bottle for the guest of honor and then drink most of it before she walks in. You order it that way when you don't intend to pay for it, and you want the damage already done by the time the person who's paying sits down. My mother stood up, both arms open, wide, theatrical. "Diana!" she cried. "Oh, sweetheart, look at you." And the whole table applauded. "I want you to sit with that." They clapped. 16 people who had let 3 years of silence sit between us without a single one of them breaking it, applauding my arrival like I was a soldier coming home, like the silence had been something that happened to all of us. A weather event, and not a door they had closed and locked from the inside. I did not cry. I want that on the record. I have a face I use when a health inspector walks into one of my kitchens unannounced. Pleasant, unhurried, completely closed. And I put it on and walked to the empty chair. The empty chair, I noticed, was at the far end, at my father's right hand. I sat. A server materialized. I ordered sparkling water. "Just water?" my mother said, mock scandalized, already reaching for the Bordeaux. "Sweetheart, we got the good stuff. Come on. This is a celebration. Just water for now," I said. "I'm driving." It was true. It was also the first brick I laid in the wall I was going to need. The dig started with the second pour. Aunt Linda went first, because Aunt Linda always goes first. She raised her glass in my direction, smiling with her mouth and measuring me with her eyes. "Must be nice," she said, "running all those fancy restaurants while the rest of us are out here clipping coupons." Big laugh. Table laughed with her. The laugh was a rapper. The words inside it were not funny, and her eyes weren't laughing at all. Her eyes were doing math. I told myself, it's Aunt Linda. She's always like this. It's nothing. Then Tyler, my cousin, leaning across 2 seats with a slider in his hand. "You really landed on your feet, Diana. That's awesome, honestly. Good for you," which sounds kind written down. It did not sound kind. It sounded like a man identifying an exit. Then Brooke, my little sister who I co-signed nothing nothing for but quietly housed for a year, who hadn't looked up from her phone since I sat down. She said, to the table more than to me, not looking up. She wouldn't know how any of us are doing. She hasn't exactly been around. And there it was, the reframe, the silence. Their silence, handed back to me as my abandonment. I'd left them. I was the one who hadn't been around. 3 years of unanswered texts, rewritten in real time into a story where I was the daughter who'd grown too good for her family, and they were the long-suffering people who'd finally, generously, decided to forgive me for it. Each comment was a brick, and every brick pointed the same direction. You have money, we can see it. You owe us. Pay up. I sipped my water. I said almost nothing. I have learned that when people are building a case against you, the most powerful thing you can do is decline to give them new material. So I gave them old material. I asked Uncle Greg about his fishing. I asked Tyler about his Jeep. I let them talk, and I watched. And I felt the thing I'd refused to feel in the parking lot finally settle all the way down into my chest like a stone reaching the bottom of a well. This was not a dinner. This was a collection. At the 40-minute mark, 7:51, I remember the clock on the wall. I set down my napkin and said I needed the restroom. Nobody noticed. They were 3 bottles deep and mid-story. The restroom at Marrow is the single occupancy kind, marble and dim and quiet, the kind of room designed to make you feel rich for 90 seconds. I went in not because I needed it, but because I needed to not be at that table for 60 seconds, needed to put a door between me and the sound of my own family pricing me. And there, on the marble counter beside the sink, was Brooke's phone. I knew it was hers instantly. Daisy stickers all over the case. She'd had a Daisy phase since she was 14 and apparently never left it. She must have brought it in, set it down, forgotten it. People do. The screen was still lit. She'd just been in here. The timing was that close. And across the top, a notification banner sat fading on the lock screen. I was not looking for it. I want to be clear about that, even though I know how it sounds. I didn't pick the phone up. I didn't enter a code. The banner was simply there, the way a billboard is there. And my eyes did what eyes do. The banner said, dinner plan, a group chat. 3 members listed under the name as it expanded for half a second before dimming. Mom, Dad, Brooke, dinner plan. 3 members, not 4. I should have walked out. I know that. There is a version of me, a healthier one, who washes her hands and rejoins the table and never knows exactly how the knife was forged, only that it went in. I am not that version. I tapped the screen to keep it awake, and the banner expanded, and I read. I didn't open the phone. I didn't need to. The whole conversation was right there in the notification stack, message after message, because Brooke had her previews set to show everything, the way you do when you have nothing to hide from the people standing next to you. My mother, 4 days ago. Don't tell Diana it's everyone. Once she's there with the whole family watching, she won't dare say no. She never could handle a scene. My father under it. Just make sure she sits at my end. I'll handle the ask. Brooke, 2 minutes after that, and I read this one 4 times. Order the good stuff before she gets there. Once it's on the table, she can't exactly send it back, lol lol. My hands were not shaking. I noticed that, distantly, the way you notice weather through a window. They were very still. Too still. The stillness was its own kind of alarm. I kept reading. The thread went back further than 4 days. I scrolled the previews with one finger. And yes, I know. And the older ones were worse, because the older ones weren't about me at all. The older ones were the truth the dinner was built on top of. My mother, 10 days ago. The bank called again Thursday. We need to figure something out before June. My father, Diana can cover us through spring. She's got more than enough. She just needs to be reminded what family is for. And then the one that turned the stone in my chest into something colder and heavier, something with edges. My mother replying to him, it's not even asking for money. It's letting her back into the family. She should be grateful we're giving her the chance. Grateful. I read it one more time to be sure I wasn't inventing it. I wasn't. I locked the phone. I set it down on the marble exactly where it had been. Daisy stickers facing the same direction. Screen at the same angle. I have no idea why that precision mattered to me, but it did. I think some part of me had already decided that everything from this point forward was going to be clean. I washed my hands. The water was very hot, and I let it be. I looked at myself in the mirror. Black slacks, gray blouse, the dressed-down disguise of a woman who'd come prepared to be underestimated and had been right to. And I understood with the total clarity that comes maybe 3 times in a life that I was not going to make a scene. My mother had bet the whole evening on a single sentence. She never could handle a scene. She was correct. I can't. I hate scenes. I have spent my entire adult life being the calmest person in any room precisely because I grew up in a house where the loudest person won, and I decided very young that I would simply never compete in that arena. So I wasn't going to give her a scene. I was going to give her an invoice. David found me before I found him, which tells you what kind of floor manager he was. He was standing near the service station at the mouth of the hallway, mid-30s, jacket sharp, the specific watchful stillness of someone who has been managing a 16 top that's 3 bottles deep and getting louder, and who can feel the way good floor people people can, that something at that table is wrong in a way that's about to become his problem. I know that stillness. I hire for it. Are you the manager on tonight? I asked. Floor manager. David. A beat. Is everything all right with your party? I almost laughed at your party. Can I ask you something and will you give me an honest answer? I said. When the reservation was made, the 16-top back alcove under my parents' name, whose card went on file to hold it? David's face did a small, careful thing. He's not supposed to tell me that. He knew he wasn't supposed to tell me that. I'd have to check, he said, which meant he knew. I'm not asking you to charge anything, I said. I just need to know if I'm about to step on a rake. I work in this industry. I run ops for the Hearthstone Group, 4 restaurants. You can look me up. I'm not trying to make your night harder. I'm trying to make it easier. Something in him relaxed about 10%. One operator to another. He glanced down the hall toward the alcove, then back at me. There's a card on file to guarantee the reservation, he said carefully. Standard for a party that size. It hasn't been run. The understanding at booking was that the bill would be settled at the table. By whom? The gentleman who booked said his daughter would be taking care of it. He paused. You're the daughter. I'm a daughter, I said. There are 2 of us here tonight. I'm the one who didn't agree to anything. David said nothing, but his eyebrows moved. Here's what's true, I went on, keeping my voice exactly level, the health inspector voice, friendly and final. I am not the host of this table. I did not order this food or this wine. I will not be covering this check. There's a card already on file, the gentleman who booked it. When the table is ready for the bill, please bring the full check to him. At the head of the table, the one in the blue shirt. I watched David run the calculation. Every restaurant person runs 100 times a shift. Who's actually going to pay, and how do I make sure I get paid without lighting a fire in my own dining room? You understand, he said slowly, that if there's a dispute at the table about the bill, there won't be a dispute about who pays, I said. There's a card on file. It guarantees the reservation. Run it. That's what it's there for. The man who put it down is the man who told you his daughter would pay, and he was wrong about which daughter, and that is not your problem, and it is not mine. It's his. David looked at me for what felt like a long time, and was probably 3 seconds. Then he nodded. I'll bring it to the head of the table, he said. Thank you, David. Can I get you anything else? Another sparkling water? I think I'm about done with water, I said, but thank you. I went back to the table. I sat back down at my father's right hand. I picked up my conversation with Uncle Greg about fishing exactly where I'd left it, and Greg never noticed I'd gone anywhere, because Greg was now 4 glasses deep, and the Bordeaux had made him generous and loud. And then my father, sensing the evening reaching its natural summit, tapped his knife against his glass. The table quieted. 16 faces turned. He stood, a little unsteadily, and he beamed down the length of the table at me, and I understood that this was the moment my mother's text had been building toward for 10 days. I'll handle the ask. I just want to say, he began, how good it is to have this family back together. All of us. Under one roof. He raised his glass, my $400 bottle in his hand, because that's what matters. Not the silly stuff. Not money, family, and family, he looked right at me, takes care of family. The table murmured its approval. Aunt Linda dabbed at her eye with a knuckle, performing a tear. Brooke finally looked up from her phone, and there was something in her face that I'll think about for a long time. Not guilt, exactly. Anticipation. She was waiting to watch me fold. They all were. The whole table had been gathered as an audience for the one act they were certain I couldn't refuse to perform. Diana, cornered, smiling, reaching for her purse. My father turned, the gracious patriarch, and signaled across the room. I think, he announced, we're ready for the check. And David, who had been waiting, who had read this table better than anyone at it, crossed the floor with the leather folder in his hand. He walked the length of the alcove. He did not stop at me. He set it down, smoothly and without ceremony, directly in front of my father. Whenever you're ready, sir, David said. I've gone ahead and run the card on file to hold it. Just need a signature. Can I get anyone a coffee? That's when the second of silence happened. The one I started with. The one where 16 people all at once failed to understand what they were seeing. My father picked up the folder the way you pick up something you don't recognize. He opened it. I watched the number land on his face, $4,180 and change, I'd learn, and I watched his expression travel in real time, from confusion to denial to something close to fear. He looked up. He found me. Diana, he said. Sweetheart, there's been a mix-up with the bill. No, I said. There hasn't. I want to describe the next 90 seconds carefully, because they are the entire reason I'm telling you this. My father's smile held for one more sentence. The arrangement, he said lower now, leaning toward me, the patriarch voice dropping into the negotiation voice, was that you'd be handling tonight. We discussed this. We didn't, I said. You discussed it, with Mom and Brooke, in a group chat called Dinner Plan, the one I'm not in. My mother's head turned toward Brooke so fast I heard her necklace click. Brooke's hand went to where her phone wasn't, then to her lap, then she was up and half out of her chair, mumbling about the restroom, and I said, quietly, just to the table, no scene, never a scene. It's on the counter in there. You set it down. The screen shows previews. You should really turn those off. Brooke sat back down very slowly. I read it, I said. All of it. Don't tell Diana it's everyone. Order the good stuff before she gets there. She can't send it back, LOL. She should be grateful we're giving her the chance. I looked at my mother when I said that last one, because she'd written it, and I wanted her to know I knew her handwriting. Did I get any of it wrong? Nobody said I had. Aunt Linda, who is incapable of silence, tried to laugh her way across the gap. Oh, come on, Diana, it's just dinner. Don't be so— It's $4,180, Linda, I said. It's not just dinner. You priced it yourself. You ordered the lobster knowing you weren't paying for it. That's not dinner. That's theft with a centerpiece. The word theft dropped into the alcove and stayed there. My father set the folder down. He'd stopped smiling finally. The news had reached the smile. You'd really do this, he said. Embarrass your whole family over money. After we reached out. After 3 years. And here's the thing. Here is the thing I'd figured out somewhere between the mirror and the table. He wasn't wrong that it was about 3 years. He was just wrong about whose 3 years. You didn't reach out, I said. You ran low and you remembered I existed. There's a difference. And I can read it in your own text messages. The bank called Thursday. You needed to figure something out before June. So you booked a $4,000 dinner you couldn't pay for, gathered an audience, and bet the whole thing on me being too embarrassed to say no in front of Aunt Linda. I let that sit. You spent money, you don't have to manipulate money out of me. That's not a fresh start. That's the same thing you've always done, just bigger, because the bank's louder now. My father had no answer for that, because there wasn't one. So he reached for the only thing left. Family, he said, takes care of family. And I finally got to say the thing I'd been swallowing since I was 19 years old. It does, I said. I co-signed your truck. I paid Brooke's deposit. I covered the electric 3 months when I was a teenager living on tips. For 20 years in this family, family takes care of family has meant one thing and one thing only. Diana takes care of family. I picked up my sparkling water, the last of it, and I stood. I'm done being the only one who has to mean it. I put 2 20s on the table, for David, for the heroically managed night, not for them. The card's already run, Dad, I said. You're just signing. Tip well, he earned it. And I walked out. Behind me, I heard it start. Not applause this time. The other thing. Aunt Linda's voice climbing. My mother saying, Frank, what do we do? My father saying, everyone just calm down. Uncle Greg asking genuinely if his portion of the lobster could be split off separately, and the whole engineered evening collapsing inward like the cafe with the bumper sticker. I did not make a scene. I just left them in one. I'd love to tell you it ended in the parking lot. It didn't. Real things don't end where the satisfying part ends. What actually happened is that my father's card, the one David ran to hold the reservation, the one that, it turned out, was the same account the bank had been calling about, declined 3 days later when he tried to use it for gas. The $4,180 had pushed something over an edge it was already leaning on. I know this because Uncle Greg, of all people, called me about it, and Greg is constitutionally unable to keep a secret, which is why he's my favorite of them despite everything. Greg told me the rest too over the following weeks, in the guilty, oversharing way of a man who'd eaten the lobster and was now uneasy about the bill. The dinner, it turned out, had been the backup plan. The main plan had been a thing my parents were calling, with no apparent irony, consolidating the family's resources, which meant a second mortgage on the house they'd already borrowed against twice, plus, and this is the part that made me sit down when Greg said it, a plan to have me co-sign it. The dinner was supposed to soften me up. The ask my father was going to handle at his end of the table, after the wine and the applause and the we missed you so much, sweetheart, was going to be, will you put your name on the house with us just to get us through to June? The same move as the truck, the same move as everything, just with 3 more zeros and a worse downside, because when you co-sign a mortgage that's already underwater for people who treat money like weather, you are not helping them. You are buying a building that's on fire. I didn't co-sign anything, obviously. But here's what I did do, and it's the part I'm actually proud of, more than the check. I called a lawyer. Her name is Patricia Okafor, and she's done estate and family financial work for 19 years, and I'd kept her card from a closing on a property our restaurant group did. I sat in her office and laid the whole thing out. The truck I'd co-signed at 23 and was still, 6 years later, legally attached to, the apartment deposit, the screenshots I'd taken of the dinner plan thread, because yes, I'd photographed Brooke's screen. I'm not a saint, I'm an operations person and operations people document. Patricia looked at the truck loan first. You know this is still open, she said, and you know that if he defaults, this is your credit, not just his. I knew. I'd known for 6 years, and chosen not to look at it directly. The way you don't look directly at a mole you're afraid is changing. She walked me through getting my name off it. It took 4 months, 2 certified letters, a refinance he was forced into, and one genuinely ugly phone call where my father told me I was tearing the family apart over paperwork, and I told him the paperwork was a $46,000 liability with my name on it that he'd never once made me aware was at risk, and we did not speak again after that. Patricia also told me something I'll never forget. She said, "You'd be amazed how often the thing that finally frees people isn't the big confrontation. It's the small administrative one, the refinance, the removed signature, the closed account. People wait their whole lives for an apology that's never coming, when what they actually needed was to get their name off a loan. I got my name off the loan in August. It's been a little over a year now. The house didn't get its third mortgage. No bank would touch it, with or without my signature, which tells you everything about whether my co-signing would have helped. My parents downsized. They're in a 2-bedroom rental 40 minutes the other direction now, and from what Greg tells me, they're fine. Diminished, but fine. Nobody's on the street. The lobster did not bankrupt them. I want to say that plainly, because the satisfying version of this story ends with them ruined, and I don't actually want anyone thinking that's what justice looked like. Justice looked like a budget they finally had to live inside. Brooke and I are not in contact, which is its own small grief. She sent one text, about 2 months after the dinner. It said, "I can't believe you embarrassed mom and dad like that over a meal. No acknowledgement of the LOL. No acknowledgement of any of it." I didn't reply. Some doors you don't have to slam. You just stop walking back through them. Aunt Linda tells anyone who'll listen that I'm obsessed with money, which, from a woman who ordered $400 wine she had no intention of paying for, is a sentence I've decided to simply enjoy. Uncle Greg and I get coffee every few weeks. He's the only one who ever said the word sorry, and he meant it about the lobster specifically, which somehow makes it more sincere, not less. And me, I kept the sticky note, the one from the steering wheel, one dinner, then home. It's in the drawer of my nightstand, folded in half, and every so often I take it out and look at it, because it turned out to be the most accurate thing I wrote all year. It was one dinner, then I went home. I think about David sometimes, the floor manager, and the 3 seconds he spent looking at me before he nodded. I think he understood something in those 3 seconds that took me 26 years to learn, that the person holding the check isn't always the person who's supposed to pay it, and that the kindest thing you can do, for the restaurant, for the table, for yourself, is to put the bill in front of the person who actually ordered the meal. My family ordered that meal a long time ago. I just finally stopped picking up the check.